This is J. Krishnamurti's fourth discussion with students in Amsterdam, 1969.
We were talking the last time we met here about what is learning and to what extent does criticism, not only self-criticism but also criticism of others, of society and so on, in what way does learning come out of criticism? That's what we were discussing the other day when we met here. Do you want to go on with that, or would you like to discuss something else? What's up? Would you discuss what is fear? I think it will be worth it, wouldn't it? Shall we discuss that? Do you all want it? Do you want to discuss it seriously or rather superficially?
Communication disturbances.
About?
Communication disturbances in the human relationship.
Communication disturbs us.
Communication, I think we can bring that question in when we discuss about fear, can't we? So shall we discuss fear? And be serious about it? You're quite sure, right? First of all, is it possible ever to be completely free of fear? Fear at the conscious level and also at the deeper levels of one's own being. There are several kinds of fears. Physical fears and psychological fears. The physical fears are like having had a disease and that happening again and being afraid of that, the pain. Or the physical fear of danger, precipice, snakes, wild animals, especially in Holland. And fears of physical activities which bring on law, police, and all the rest of it. So there are the physical fears on one side and psychological fears. So let us be very clear what we are talking about. Are we talking about physical fears or psychological fears? And the physical fears may be not at all fears, but ordinary, common sense intelligence. Right? When I see a snake, I act, run away or do something about it. And is that fear? But the mind has been trained for thousands of years to be careful of snakes. And the memory, the tradition, the conditioning of that centuries of fears says when it meets a snake, be careful. Would you call that fear? Or would you call that intelligence which says be careful? What would you say?
I think it's a kind of self-protection.
It's a kind of
Self-protection.
Therefore, it is not fear. It is a necessary form of intelligence which says, be on your guard. There is danger of a precipice, a bus coming by. Be careful, which is a form of self-protection. Surely that's not fear, is it? Hmm?
Well, I suppose that psychological fear is also involved.
Let's go slowly at it, sir. Let's go. Psychological fears may be involved in it. Only when we are not very clear where the psychological fears interfere with physical fears and physical fears interfere with psychological fears. Right, sir? Because the neurotic person cannot be so clear. The two go together, almost tight together. The physical fears become psychological fears, and psychological fears become physical fears. And that is a neurotic state of mind. Right? So let us be clear when we are discussing fear, physical fears, which is not fear. Is it fear when, having suffered, had pain from toothache or from disease, the fear of it happening again, is that psychological fear or physical fear? Do watch it, please. Don't answer it too quickly. Go into it a little bit. I've had toothache 10 days ago, and I haven't got it now, but I'm afraid it might happen again. Is that physical fear or psychological fear? Or is it both, as you said just now? An incident which happened 10 days ago, which caused pain, I remember it, and I say, I hope it won't happen again. I'm afraid it might happen. Surely it is a psychological fear, not the two. It has happened. 10 days ago, I had a very bad toothache, or tummy ache, or headache, whatever it is. And I don't want it to happen again. Would you call that a psychological fear?
Depends. When it does happen, it is a physical fear.
But it has happened 10 days ago.
But when you know the causes of it, that it is happening
No,
again.
no, sir, just a minute, sir. We said it happened 10 days ago. I had toothache 10 days ago, and now I'm afraid it might come back. But I haven't got it. So it is surely a remembrance of the past which says which puts me in a state of fear that it might happen again. We'll go into all this presently. Let's go step by step, because it's a very complex question, this. And are the two so definitely definable, divisible? Physical fears and psychological fears. Or are they always going together? So let us begin and find out what are psychological fears first, and come to physical fears later, if you will. Shall we begin that way? What are psychological fears? I am afraid of what my neighbor might say. I am afraid that I might not pass my exams. I am afraid of my wife or husband. I am afraid of the dark. I am afraid of not being able to fulfill or succeed in life. I am afraid of loneliness, being lonely, separate, isolated, not having any relationship with others. I am afraid of being dominated. Or I feel inferior and I'm afraid of what I am. I want to be different. And I'm afraid of dying, living, and to love people. So there are these multitudinous forms of fear, right? Or can we go on from there? There are many, many fears. Now, shall we take one by one various forms of fears, or what is fear? You understand my question? Shall we go into a particular fear as what my neighbor might think about me, or I might lose my job? Shall we take a particular fear and go into it, or seeing various forms of fears, take fear? You understand? Now which shall we do?
Last thing, take fear. Take fear.
I don't know, it's up to you.
Because fear, if we know what fear is, it implies if you are fear of your neighbor.
So shall we take fear, not a particular fear, right? Can we do that? Now, will you experiment with me, not theoretically but actually, taking your fear and going into it? Otherwise it becomes theoretical, abstract and useless. Can we do that? Not confess it. Please, this is not a confession. But take your own particular fear. And as we explore what is fear, you can go along with that and apply what we begin to find out about your particular fear, right? Entendu, madame? Can we do this, sirs? All right. I hope you're serious. Otherwise it's not fun at all. First of all, there are conscious fears and hidden fears. right? Fears that are obvious and fears that one hasn't discovered yet. They're in the cave below, in the basement, which is the so-called unconscious. They are there, we haven't found them out, but we know the superficial fears, right? Now, we must understand both of it, both the conscious as well as the deeper. Otherwise you are not free of fear, right? Can we go step by step into this? You're willing, right? The deep hidden fears, or let us use the word traditional. You know, we mean by that word tradition that has been handed down. Handed down through the race, handed down through time, handed down through the family. It's there, deep down, hidden, right? Now, how are you going to find those fears? Knowing the superficial fears one can easily discover. One can easily discover them in relationship. The relationship of every day, right? Now, how am I to discover the hidden ones? Because unless I am completely free both of the outer and the inner, I am not free of fear. Right? Now, how am I to discover or come upon the fears that are hidden? Huh?
Make them superficial.
How? Make them superficial. How am I to make the hidden ones superficial? Come out, expose. Huh?
You can dream about them.
You can dream about them. Now watch it. See what happens when I dream about them. Wait, sir. Look at it. She asked a question. She said, dream about them. Now, I may dream about them, but they need to be interpreted, haven't they? By the waking consciousness. Right? Now, is the waking consciousness so free of prejudice, free of its own conditioning, so that it can interpret the dream faultlessly? So that its judgment is true. You see the difficulty? No? You don't see the difficulty, sir?
It's very difficult also. You are always just prejudiced and all that things.
What?
It is very difficult also to watch. Right.
No, sir, we're not watching. We're trying to find out how are we to uncover the hidden fears.
No, we can't because we are conditioned.
Wait, sir, don't. If you say we can't, that is the end of it. But I won't give it up. I won't give up by saying I can't. I want to find out. Come on, madam. Our own conduct will show it. If we are able to be aware of our own conduct, the hidden fears will be shown. right? Are we aware of our conduct? I know, not we can try. You see, now let's look at it. I want to be free of fears when I leave this room. You understand? So I'm deadly serious. I'm not fooling with this. It's no question of trying. When I leave this room, I say, well, it's over. Both deep and superficial psychological fears are completely wiped away. Can I do that? Is there a way? Follow it, please. Instantly understanding the whole process of fear, both the hidden as well as the superficial. Because I can drag on for 20 years or 10 days or all my life being afraid, trying, and never being free. Fear of my wife, fear of my husband, fear of, fears, one after the other, getting more and more neurotic and die at the end. I don't want to live that way. I want to be free of fear psychologically today, now. Because I want to live. I want to look at the flowers and the world and feel the beauty of everything. And I cannot as long as there is fear. So I must resolve it today. Right? Now how am I to do it? Beg pardon?
Seeing that we are preventing this from seeing flowers.
Seeing that fear prevents seeing flowers? No, madam, please listen to this for a few minutes. Would you listen? Which is, I want to be free now, not tomorrow. It's like a man who is hungry. It's no good talking to him about, well, you'll have food day after tomorrow. He wants it now. And he's intense about it. He's serious because he's starving. So in the same way, I want to be completely free of fear, psychologically, which means not dependent on anybody, not be dominated by anybody, not to feel lonely, all the rest of it. Can I do this so completely that there is no fear at all? Should you not concentrate on yourself? I haven't the time. I don't know how to concentrate on myself. I haven't the time to understand myself. Myself being the conscious as well as the deep down. How am I, please listen to this, how am I to be free now of fear? Or is that totally impossible? If you say it is totally impossible, then I'm always living in the prison of fear. So there is only one thing to do in that. I want to find out what is fear. Whether it is hidden or superficial. I want to know what it is. How it comes into being. How does it come?
Imagination.
Huh?
Imagination.
Imagination. I imagine that I've had pain and I'm afraid it might happen again. Imagination. What is imagination? thought. Huh? Follow it up, sir. Follow it up. That is, I've had pain 10 days ago. There is the remembrance of it, and it might happen again tomorrow. That is, thought reacting to the memory says tomorrow I'll have pain again. Therefore, I'm afraid. Right? Is that clear? I mean, can we go along from there? Yeah?
What is the source of that thought?
Huh?
What is the source of that thought? The source, the cause?
Cause. We'll go into that. First, let us see. What fear exists where thought as the response of the past comes into being. Right?
No, there can be immediate fear.
Huh?
Without thought. There can be immediate fear.
There can be immediate fear
Without thought.
without thought. Huh? Just a minute, sir. Just look at it. I die suddenly. With heart failure or the beam falling on my head. Immediate death. There is no fear. It's over. Give me an interval between living and dying, then that interval is fear. Right? In that interval, I'm afraid that all my life which I've lived, etc., comes to an end. So I'm afraid. Can you go on from there? Huh? Right? Thought, thinking about the future, thought, thinking about the past, or thought thinking of what might happen, breeds fear, conscious as well as unconscious. The unconscious is the residue stored by thought during the centuries of time, right? I wonder if you're all meeting on this.
What is there unconscious thought?
Huh?
Is there unconscious thought?
There is, sir.
Is it thought?
Look at it. Thought, whether you are conscious of it or not, thought is operating.
What is thought?
Huh?
What is thought?
We first see, we'll come to that in a minute. Just see how thought breeds fear. Thinking about the past or the future or the next minute. Which is, thought is time. Right? Please watch it yourself. This is not a class. Thought is time. Thought is fear. If there was no time, like sudden death, I'm not afraid of death. There is no time interval. Right?
What if you die slowly?
Then there is fear. Because thought says, by Jove, I have pain, I am dying, Lord save me, doctor come and help me, and all the rest of it. Beg your pardon?
What if we're not attached? Is there thought then and is there fear?
No, we're not discussing attachment or detachment. We are discussing thought is responsible for fear. Thought, which is time, as yesterday, today and tomorrow. Right? I am living now, I have lived, and I might die tomorrow. And I'm afraid of tomorrow. Thought. Thought breeds fear. Right? That's clear. This is fairly simple. Right? And thought is, we said, time. Time being the past, right? Right? Thought is the response of memory, surely. If I have had no memory of the pain of yesterday, I wouldn't think about it. Right?
You say thought is time, but is it time also thought?
I said time is thought. Thought is time.
That's the same.
Time, obviously.
Not necessarily.
But
For man and
No, sir, for what, sir, I am concerned in discussing this, not theoretically. I want to be free of fear when I leave this room. That's my whole concern and nothing else. I don't want to discuss abstractly, theoretically, in a hypothetical sense. I want to discuss so as when I leave, I can say, my God, I'm free man. Right? That means I must be tremendously intense about this. Sorry. So we find thought is time, time is thought. No, let's keep time for the
fear is
moment out.
thought.
Let's keep time for the moment, because time is something, it's extraordinary. If time, we can go into it. Thought breeds fear. Fear of the past, fear of today, fear of tomorrow. Today being the next minute. Right? That's clear. And also I find thought also breeds pleasure. No? Thought, thinking about the pleasure I had yesterday, thinking about it, gives a continuity to that pleasure of yesterday, and I want it tomorrow.
Yes, but I have an objection against that.
Yes, sir.
If I have a dog and I play with him, and I go into the field where I played yesterday with him, he is happy. The whole dog can't think. So,
Oh, I don't say, sir. I don't say dogs can't think. I mean, and this, leave the dogs and children and babies out of this. Let us, we are trying to find out for ourselves. Please, sir, do stick to this one thing. Go through with this completely to the end of it, and you will see extraordinary. You will see if you stick to it and go to the end seriously. So thought breeds fear, and thought breeds pleasure. Right?
Which comes first?
Huh?
Which comes first? Pleasure or fear?
Does it matter?
But how do you know what fear is if you don't know what pleasure is?
Does it matter? I know both pleasure and fear. And we are discussing fear.
Then we should stop thinking.
Wait, don't say that. Don't yet say that. But see the process, how fear comes into being. Then we'll find out what to do with thought. One can see fear comes as long as there is thought. If I die suddenly, there's no fear. But give me an interval of time and I'm scared stiff. Which is, in that interval of time, I'm thinking of my past pleasures, of my house, my furniture, my gods, and I don't want that, and so on. And also one sees thought also breeds this extraordinary thing called pleasure. Having had a pleasure yesterday, sexually, in various ways, says, I must have more of it. Thinking about it. Right? So thought gives continuity to fear, thought gives continuity to pleasure.
That means that you have judged the thing that happened before.
Oh, obviously. Go on, sir. Wait, sir. Look at it. So, do we want to be free of pleasure as I want to be free of fear? Wait, watch it, sir. Ask that question. Don't say. Knowing thought breeds fear, thought breeds pleasure. The one we want to get rid of, the other we want to hold on. Right? Huh? But is there any difference between pleasure and fear? Or do they go always together?
I heard about yogis who only have pleasure. Deep sense.
Sir, don't let's bring in the yogis, please. Because they're a strange crowd. Now let's leave them, because we are dealing with, as we are in this room, for God's sake, leave the yogis alone. I know a great many of them. Let's leave them alone. So what am I to do? Get rid of one and hold on to the other? Huh? That's what we are doing. We say, give me pleasure, and for God's sake, take away fear from me. Knowing fear, thought is breeding both. You're stuck, aren't you? You want pleasure, sex, flattery, amusement, pleasure.
But that gives another fear.
And not having it brings you sorrow,
Yes.
which is fear.
Yes.
So what are you going to do? Huh?
Now,
Come on, Mira. You skip the pleasure? Do you? Do you want to skip pleasure?
pleasure in everything.
Moment you have pleasure, you must have fear.
Yes. So don't call it pleasure.
Call it X, but it's still the same.
Have it.
No, sir. No. If I want pleasure, I must have fear. Because I may be afraid I may not get it. I want one and I don't want the other. Right? What am I to do? Knowing all my social morality, all ethical values, all ideals are based on pleasure. No? So what am I to do?
By living completely in the present from moment to moment.
By living completely in the present from moment to moment. Are you doing it? Or is that an idea?
No, we are not yet able to do it.
Then I'm not interested. I am only interested to find out how to be completely free from fear when I leave here. I don't want anything else. And yet I want pleasure. The throbbing pleasure. Sex, amusement, the whole of that I want. I don't want the other. Watch it, sir. Watch it, don't answer. So there is a contradiction in me, isn't there? I want this and I don't want that. Right? Right? So there is contradiction.
Why am I wanting it?
Huh?
Why
Why? Why do you want pleasure?
What is pleasure?
Are you asking me? Yes, ask yourself, sir, why do you want pleasure? No, follow it, sir. Be serious. Go into it very carefully. I want pleasure and I don't want the other.
Well, still some people like to suffer, I know.
Those are neurotic people.
Well,
I mean, there are sadists and all kinds of... we're not talking about those people. Here I am, in this room, and I want to be free of this beastly thing. What am I to do? So, I found out two things. Pleasure and pain, brought about by thought. I want one, and I want to discard the other. So, watch it, sir. So, in me, I create a conflict, don't I? I'm wanting this and not wanting that. Right? So, what has happened now? Fear, pleasure, conflict. I have now three issues instead of one. I don't know if you're following all this. Right? And having conflict, I say I must not have conflict. So that becomes another. So I have now four problems instead of one. So what am I to do?
Find out why
I-
you can separate fear.
Oh, why we separate is very simple. Why we separate fear and pleasure? Huh? Don't you know?
Pleasure again.
Exactly. The one, if I could get rid of fear, how much more pleasure I shall have. But knowing all the time, there is fear with pleasure, all the time.
How about the thrill?
Huh?
How about the thrill?
How about a thrill?
How about?
A thrill.
How about a thrill? One takes drugs and out of it there is a thrill. Take a trip and all the rest of it. And the trip or the thrill goes away. And I'm back again. I want it again tomorrow. You follow? Come on, madam.
If there were only pleasure, it wouldn't be so big. So we bring in fear so that the pleasure should be better.
Is that the reason you have one pleasure? No.
Oh, it's that memory.
No. So memory. I want one, I don't want the other. And I find there's this contradiction breeds more conflict, more pain. In wanting to get rid of pain, I'm increasing pain. Right? So what am I to do?
Get rid of the contradiction.
Come on, madam.
She says we must get rid of the contradiction instead.
How am I to get rid of contradiction
And pleasure.
when I want one and I don't want the other? Right? You see the problem? Huh? You see the problem very clearly?
I think don't look so much to the difference to that two things, and then you are feeling not so.
But I'm attached to things. I'm attached to my wife, attached to the house. It gives me great pleasure. You So, don't, please, if I may suggest, don't answer yet. Look at the question first. The question is, I want pleasure, and more the merrier, more of it, and I don't want the fear which goes with pleasure. So what am I to do?
Don't let it be an obsession.
Oh, madam, don't say don't let it be. This happens all the time.
Give up both of them.
Huh?
Give up both of them.
How can I? Wait. Give up both of them. Can I give up looking at the tree?
I can give up letting the pleasure dominate me.
No, sir. What? That means conflict. You're back again because you want more pleasure.
Well, you can look at a flower and not think about it being a pleasure.
But you do. When you look at a beautiful car, you have pleasure. When you look at a beautiful woman or girl, you have pleasure. When you look at the hills and the mountains and the clouds, you have pleasure. Are you saying you mustn't look at the clouds?
No, you shouldn't think about it.
Huh?
You shouldn't think about it.
Now, how am I not to think about it?
To be aware that this conflict, to be aware, only that.
No, sir, just stop. Look, sir, look, consider for a moment what we are talking about. I want pleasure and I don't want fear. And thought brings both. And if I fight fear, I fight thought, suppress it, that becomes another problem because I want greater pleasure. Right? And therefore greater pain. Right?
Is pleasure the only thing you want? I want.
Anything you want is pleasure. The wanting is pleasure.
Want is pleasure. I
Is it
don't.
the only thing you want?
That's all. I want God, I want position, I want fame, I want to be virtuous, I want to revolt, I want a better wife, and so on, better. It's all pleasure. So what am I to do? Now watch it, sir. Whatever I do is in terms of pleasure, getting rid of pain, right? Whatever I do with regard to pleasure and pain is to increase pleasure and therefore increase pain. Me being thought. Thought says, by Jove, if I could only stop fear, then I'll have more pleasure. But thought also says now, I can't do that very well because fear will come along. So thought says, whatever, please follow this carefully, whatever I do is in terms of fear and pleasure. And therefore more pleasure, more pain. Right? Whatever thought does breeds more pleasure, more pain. Obviously, right?
Yes.
Right?
You said at the beginning that when we get the room, we must be completely free of fear.
I'm going to show it to you. Watch it, sir. Go on with it.
This is another thought which breeds again pleasure and fear.
No, sir, no, sir. We said, look, follow it, sir. We said, what is fear? We'll have to go back a little bit. What is fear? We said fear is the product of time.
Thought.
Time. Thought is time. Thinking about yesterday and might happen again tomorrow. Thought says, my God, I hope it won't. Fear. And also, thought says, thinks of the beautiful pleasure you had yesterday and you want it repeated tomorrow or today. So thought breeds pleasure and fear, right? And next step, whatever thought does is more fear and more pleasure. Whatever it does.
Isn't the degree of pleasure measured by the degree of fear?
What's
The less
that?
fear, the more pleasure.
What's that?
Is not the degree of pleasure measured by the degree of fear?
Yes. And the degree of pleasure is measured by fear.
Yes, the less fear, the more pleasure.
Therefore, how do you get rid of fear?
So therefore, the point where there is neither would be a state of limbo, and there would be no feeling.
Wait, I don't know. We're going to find out. Making a statement of that kind obviously means that you haven't found out so far. I want to be free of fear when I leave this room. And I say to myself, in examining fear, I find thought operating. Thought, more and less. And there is the discovery that whatever thought does in any direction with regard to fear or pleasure is to increase pleasure and therefore increase fear. Right? Are we clear on this point?
So what makes us think?
Wait. What makes us think is very simple. You ask me a question, a challenge. Memory responds immediately as thought, answers, right? You ask my name, and I am familiar with my name, and I reply immediately.
No, sir. I mean, what makes us think when we see a flower?
Because the eye, the smell, the scent, the color, stimuli, and the brain reacts, and thought. That's a beautiful violet or rose. That's fairly simple, sir. Wait, let's go on. So there are three things now. Fear, pleasure, and whatever thought does increases one or the other, right?
Therefore both.
Therefore both, of course. Is this clear? Not verbally, but actually. Whatever thought does with regard to fear and pleasure. If it says, I must suppress pleasure, then there's conflict and fear of not being able to suppress it, because you want to get rid of fear. Right? So one sees that whatever thought does, in any direction, up or down or any direction, is productive of more fear and more pleasure, productive of both. Therefore, thought is both. Right?
Well, you seem to have no thought.
Wait, watch it, sir. Go slowly. Thought is both. If there was no thought, there would be no fear, no pleasure. So thought is product of both, and thought is both. Thought only knows fear and pleasure, and nothing else. Therefore, thought is that and that. Shall we go along from there? Is that clear?
Yes.
So any movement of thought is pleasure and fear. Now wait a minute, do I see this? Seeing means not verbally hearing, but actually understanding that whatever thought does is a movement between the two. And therefore, the movement is thought. Right? Huh? Huh?
He doesn't think it's exactly the same thing.
So look at it. Thought breeds fear, thought breeds pleasure. It wants one and it doesn't want the other. Without thought, one would live. I don't know how, but one would live. And thought is that and that. Although if there was no thought, that wouldn't be there, that wouldn't be there. So, whatever thought does is a movement in fear, in pleasure. Right? Do you accept this? Not accept it from me. Do you see this? Do you see this as clearly as you see out of the window? Which means that you really deeply understand it. That whatever movement thought does is a movement of pleasure and pain. The good is the pleasure, the bad is the pain. The one to be avoided, the other to be cherished.
Why is there a different ratio?
What's that?
Several people seem to have a different ratio between pleasure and fear.
In different people, the ratio between pleasure and fear seems to be different.
Of course, of course. Fear may predominate and pleasure little. So our pleasure dominate and fear, they both exist. That's all the main point is, not which dominates the other. These two facts exist. And these two facts are brought about by thought. And any movement of thought is to increase one or the other. And therefore increase both. Right?
Yes.
Any movement. Do I really see this? Understand it? Do I feel it in my bones that any movement of thought must bring inevitably one or the other? If I don't see it, I shan't be free of fear. Or I shan't know what to do with pleasure. Right? Do I actually understand this fact? Fact, not a theory, not a supposition, not an agreement, not a description which you have accepted, but actually see it as you see your face in the mirror. Right? Do you see it? Now, if you see it, what takes place? Go slowly, sir. Go slowly. Take time, take a little breath. Because it's very important to find this out. Knowing that whatever thought does in any direction between the two increases both, because thought is both. Do I see this? As clearly as I see the snake is deadly. When you see this, what takes place? But please, madam, don't answer. This is really extraordinarily difficult. We're asking one of the most difficult things. Don't say there is no fear or there is fear.
Prevents you from looking.
Huh? prevents.
When you have fear, when you understand what that thought breeds fear or pleasure, you understand that thought prevents you from looking.
So I'm asking what has taken place. Please do watch it for yourself, and you will know then what to do. You will be out of this mess. Watch it. Thought, whatever it does, breeds fear. Whatever it does. And it has come to this point because it is examined, looked, observed, felt, both pleasure and fear. And says now, whatever I do, which is thought, is a movement of pain and pleasure. When that is realized, what has taken place? Huh? What, madam?
Laugh at both of them.
No, I can't laugh. No. I can't laugh at my pleasure. Do you laugh at your pleasure? Sometimes when it is not profitable. No, please stay with this for a few minutes. You will see for yourself how simple it is.
You're seeing that fear is just positive, like just so positive as the pleasure is.
That's what we are saying. This is fairly simple and clear what we have said. I'm asking now, myself and you, what has taken place when observing the ways of fear and the ways of pleasure, and observing how thought has come into being, and how thought wants one, discards the other, and knowing now that whatever thought does is a movement between the two and therefore increasing both. And when the mind really sees that, what has taken place? May I tell you what has taken place? If you are doing it, if you have done this actually.
We are trying, but we can't.
Huh?
We are trying, but we can't.
No, sir. No, sir. There's no question of can't. A man who is hungry doesn't say I can't. He goes, begs, borrows, steals, does everything to get food. He doesn't say I can't.
There is no fear at the moment.
And not at the moment, sir. We are, of course, at the moment there is nothing. But you have had fear. You have had pleasure. You want one and you don't want the other. Now I'm asking, what takes place in the mind, in the whole business, when it has seen this process very clearly? Hmm? No fear, then means no pleasure.
Maybe stopping thinking.
Stopping thinking? Can you stop thinking?
That's what I'm asked. I don't know. That's
No, I'm not asking how to stop thinking. That's quite a different question. I have seen now the ways of pleasure and pain. And I have seen, the mind also sees thought. Whatever it does breeds more. Now he said, by Jove, it's very clear what has taken place. What I have seen, what the mind has seen. Now what in that perception, what has happened? What has happened in that perception? No, sir.
accept the situation?
No, I'm not going to accept situation as, I'm not going to accept fear. I'll tell you, but you see, you are not with it. Look, what has happened? I have fears. I must go over it a little bit so that you go with it. There are fears. We said, shall we take in one particular fear? We said, no, let's take fear. Then if we know if we can understand fear, then we can deal with a particular fear. There is fear. We said, how does it arise? We said, thought, thinking about the past, the present, and the future. And thought also thinks about the past, the present, and the future in terms of pleasure and pain. Thought is the bringer, the entity that brings both pleasure and pain. And thought says I must get rid of one and hold on to the other. And it sees also that's impossible. Because where any movement of thought is between the two, because it is the mother of both. And when I said, by Jove, I see this. It's very clear. I've understood the whole mechanism of it. And the next thing I asked myself, what has happened? Free of pleasure?
No, if you see it.
If I see what? Thought creates.
If you see the mechanism.
If I see the mechanism, what is the mind free of? Both? Free of thought? No, sir, do look at it. Then if it is free of thought, then you don't know how to get home. You have understood and you have become silent. Is that it? Now you are guessing. Please, don't guess. Because you can't guess about your life, it's yours.
Because you look back.
What?
Because you look back to yesterday.
What, sir?
That you look back.
You can't look back. Stop looking back. That means stop looking back. But you are the back. All of you is the past. How can you stop looking back? You're going off. You stick to this one thing, please.
If you see this, you have separated yourself from it.
No, more than that. Will you give me 2 minutes? I'll talk and you'll see for yourself. I say I've understood it. I've understood this whole machinery. What is this understanding? This understanding is intelligence, isn't it? Right? Right? Intelligence says, by Jove, I've learned about this. In examining this process of pleasure, pain, thought, intelligence has come. Right? 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 Has that intelligence come? Then intelligence will say, what will you do about pleasure? Not how to get rid of it. What will you do with pleasure? Are you meeting my point? Intelligence is in operation. Not pleasure or fear. You are getting on?
You're handling it.
No. You see, intelligence is not memory. Look, by examining this, to examine, the mind had to be very alert. To be alert has to be sensitive to fear, to pleasure, all the complications of it. And so it has become extremely sensitive, right? To both fear and pleasure. It doesn't deny either. But because it doesn't deny, it's observing both. Therefore, it's highly awake and sensitive. That state is intelligence. Now, intelligence is going to operate, not pleasure or fear. You got it? Before, it was fear and pleasure operating. Now, intelligence is at work. Right? As physically, when you met a snake, intelligence operated. Right? Now, what does that intelligence do with regard to pleasure? You understand my question? I'm intelligent now because I watched this thing operating. Pleasure, pain, thought, time, all that. And any movement of thought is to further pleasure, pain. Now, the mind is extraordinarily intelligent.
What's to it?
Huh?
I think the intelligence what's to it all the time.
What, sir?
Your intelligence will what's to it all the time.
Watch it.
We'll watch it. My intelligence is now intelligence, not mine. Intelligence is not yours or mine, it's intelligence. It's not nationalistic, thank God. So intelligence is in operation. Now, how is that intelligence going to deal with fear and pain?
As things not belonging to self.
You see, sir, I've gone away altogether from fear. Or pleasure. There is only a awakened state of mind which is highly intelligent. Right? And to such a state of mind, is there fear? And is there pleasure? Don't say no, because I'm asking questions. I mean, mind is awake. Before it was not awake. It was denying one and wanting the other more, and therefore breeding conflict. And conflict makes for dullness of mind and heart and all that. So the mind now sees all this and is highly awake. Is yours? If not, when you leave, you will have fear. Is yours highly awake because you have watched all this? What does a awakened mind do with regard to pleasure?
You don't long for it anymore.
Madame, don't guess. Please, je vous en prie. Don't guess, then there is no fun. Your guess is as good as somebody else's guess. But if your mind is actually awake, in the sense we are talking about, then how does it deal with pleasure? Which is what? Seeing a beautiful woman, seeing a beautiful tree, cloud, car, It doesn't shut its eyes. That means resisting it. It sees it. What takes place? Please don't guess. Don't theorize. Before, when you looked at a woman or a tree or a man, you thought in terms of pleasure and pain. And now it's awake, and yet it sees the woman, the child, the man, the tree and the mountain. How does it respond?
There's love.
You see, you're guessing, madam. What's that? Come on.
Does what it wants to.
Does what it wants? That's what we are doing anyhow. When you want pleasure, you have pleasure. And when you are afraid, you want to resist it. That's what you're doing, what you want. So, leave that question there for the moment. We'll come back to it. What is love? What do you call love? Don't you know it?
Perhaps to understand and to communicate?
When you say I love you, darling, physical attraction, that's one. Two, pleasure.
I think only pleasure.
Pleasure? Only?
No.
Yes, I think so.
Which you think, but when the lady or the man turns away, you get disturbed. So there is pain, there is fear. So for us, love is both pleasure and fear. No? 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 You don't think so? And don't say it is not love. That's all we know. To us, love is pleasure and pain. Because if I love you and you turn away from me, I get angry, jealous, annoyed, furious. I feel lonely.
Do you really love
Huh?
them?
That is still love then.
Huh?
And it's still love then.
But that's what I do. Yeah, not so. That's a theory. If my wife, I'm not married, but if my wife, perhaps that's why, turns away from me, I'm desperate, I'm lonely, I'm angry, jealous, frightened. And that's what I call love.
Oh, that's what we call love.
I say that's what we call love. So love is pleasure and pain.
And union.
Huh?
And union.
Union between what? Apart from the physical union between what? Two images? The image you have about me and the image I have about you. Huh?
Or the image that there is something common.
Yes, sir. The image. My wife has an image about me, and I have an image about her. My wife, girl, or whatever it is. I have an image about her. Follow this close a little bit. My wife has an image about me, and I have an image about her. These images have been built through physical contact, sex, pleasure, through nagging, through domination, through fear. She has built one out of me, and I have built out of her, right? Don't you? Isn't that so? No?
Yes.
So, my relationship with her, apart from the physical, is between these two images. Right? Huh? And the relationship between the two images I call love. No? I'm sorry to expose all this. So, is that love? Is love pleasure? Don't say no. That's all we know.
Is there another love?
Wait. I'm going to find out. I can only find out if I understand what is fear and pleasure. If love is not pleasure, and you can't say it is not. If love is not desire and pain, then what is love? Then what is relationship? Relationship between the two images? Huh? How terrible that is. Huh?
Operating intelligence.
No, it's you see, you have learned that now, and you're quoting that back to me. So, is love pleasure, and is love fear? It is both for us. No? And my relationship is based on images. My wife hurt me yesterday, said unpleasant things in anger, irritation, and I retain that as memory. And that's the image I have about her. She has an image about me because I'm a dominating male, aggressive. So she has that image. So my relationship with her, apart from the sexual, is the image of relationships. Right? Is the image between the two images. And I have an image about myself. No? I am a great man. I'm going to be ambitious. I'm inferior. I must be successful. So I have not only my image about myself, I have an image about my wife, about my neighbor, about the politician, about the priest, right? And I call this relationship, which is living in the past. My wife nagged me. That has left a mark. And that mark is the image. So I'm living with her in the past, and she is living with me with her past. And this relationship between the two paths we call relationship and love. Right? So is that love? Then what is love? And all this is not love. Jealousy, envy, image making, holding on to memories of insults and flatteries. All that's not love. But that is what I have, which is again based on fear and pleasure, right? So love is fear and pleasure for us.
But isn't it dependent on what you do with it?
What's that?
Isn't it depending on what you do with it? I mean, if you are jealous, for instance, shouldn't you show that you're jealous?
May I take my coat off? What's that?
I mean, if you are jealous, for instance, shouldn't you show that you are jealous? Do something with your
or you do so, we get angry. We get annoyed, we get ugly. So we have found something, sir. Fear and jealousy, fear and pleasure are the product of thought. Thought also calls it love. And now what have I done? I have found something. By looking at this phenomenon of relationship, of pleasure and pain, observing it very, very closely in myself, not as an idea, actually in myself, I have discovered that out of this observation, intelligence has come. Is that intelligence love? And therefore no fear and no pain. And I love the bird. I love those trees. I love that woman. And when she turns her face away from me, I'm not jealous because my intelligence is in operation. I am not dependent on her or she on me, because both of us have understood what it means to love. If sex is pleasure, sex then also is pain. There we want again the same phenomena. One, pleasure and fear. Don't want fear, but hold on. So when I've understood this phenomena now, because our mind is awake and intelligent, and it is intelligence that's going to operate with regard to pleasure and with regard to pain. Before it was thought in operation with regard to pleasure and pain. Right? Now it is intelligence. That intelligence says, when the fear arises, it's going to watch it very, very closely. It neither wants to get rid of it or free of it. It wants to look. Therefore, intelligence is in operation. And again the same thing. When that intelligence is in operation, the sexual images, the wants, all the physiological stimulation of adverts, all that. Intelligence is in operation. Therefore, my wife turns away from me. There is no jealousy. Because I really love her and wish her. And because I am free, I see to it that she is free. Which doesn't mean promiscuous marriages and sleeping together and all the rest of it. What? Intelligence is in operation. And therefore love. Love is not pleasure and love is not pain. Now, at the end of this, are you free of fear? If you are not, something is wrong with the speaker or with you. Huh? What's that?
We knew it already, that there was something wrong with spoken to. Maybe also with the speaker, but that we do not know. Because
I know. I'm not. The speaker. No, sir. The speaker is just showing. Whether he is free or not, that's his affair. If he is not free, he's a stupid ass. Hypocrite. And it's for you to find out. Because he's just showing you what is actually going on. It's not mine or yours, it's happening right under our noses. So, when you leave this room, are you free? Are you not free of fear or free of pleasure, but awakened intelligent and therefore in a state of love? That is going to do that. That will operate with regard to fear and pleasure when it arises. Have you got it?
Is it that easy to awake your intelligence?
What's that?
Is it that easy to awake your intelligence? To be fully aware?
Yes, sir. It is that easy if you are serious and have followed this thing step by step.
What about physical exhaustion? Is intelligence come to sleep?
Physical exhaustion, what takes place? I'm tired. I've dug in the garden, talked too much, walked too much. A physical exhaustion, sexually, physical, 10 different ways. Then that exhaustion is brought about by lack of intelligence. If I am awake, I'll be watchful. I won't overeat. There's not a question of putting on the brakes. Intelligence says, stupid ass, don't. You can't. So, as long as that awakened state is in operation, the problem of living becomes very simple. And therefore, living is a relationship. Not only between my friends, but also between so-called enemies. Relationship means life. And that relationship is now based on images and all the rest of it. So, but when that intelligence is of operation, relationship is direct communication. And we won't go into that. That's quite another issue. Now, when you leave this room, can you say, I'm awake? Can you? If you are not, sirs and ladies, what are you going to do? Go on the same old way, being afraid, searching for pleasure, being frightened all the time. What time is it?
57.
I'm sorry. 2 heures?
Presque, oui.
Is this clear? May I go now? Is this clear?